Thank you. Don't worry, my talk will be no longer than your check-in process was. I don't know about you. Hello, virtual world. Everyone in the middle should sit up straight because you're being streamed, or the back of your head is. And what I want to talk about is you can always get what you want. And, oops, somehow, could you actually flip so my projector is, there we go, right? With thanks to the Rolling Stones. And I want you to take a look at that picture. Look at Mick and Keith. It's somewhere in the 60s, I believe. Anyway, from you can't always get what you want, you can get what you want. If you think about what do you want when you're working? And let's be romantic to start the Agile Better Software Practices West Conference. What do you care about? And it seems to me, I think about the projects I've been on in my career, and there is a intellectual and emotional satisfaction of being on a project you're deeply proud of. That's what you want. You want to feel, like you and your teammates built something that's really useful, that's valuable for your client or for the marketplace, that it's solid. You proudly sign your name to it, so to speak. And that feels great. And if you've ever had that feeling, it's addictive. That's probably why we're all in the business so long. Lots of projects don't get that feeling, but every once in a while you get that feeling where you just go, this is why I do this. This is so much fun. It's so deep. It's emotional and it's intellectual. Right? It's just a great work. I mean, let's be real. I think software development is one of the great intellectual community pursuits of our lifetime. Just the brain power put together to solve a complex problem. And so I say we can always get what we want, and we're at a crossroads, I think. Now, Lee said, I'm the court jester. I'm going to try this set of ideas on you. And I figured as a keynoter, my job is just to poke you, to tell me I'm a fool, to tell me maybe I'm right, to make you think about some things. And so that's what I'm going to try to do here in the next few minutes, and stir the pot. By the way, if you buy a book, I am on call to sign it 24 hours a day. None of this half an hour, 2 to 2:30. You find me, I'll be happy to sign. So, you hear all these things of waterfall and agile and incremental and spiral, and these things really matter, don't they? And yeah, they do, but there's one giant unstated notion in here, and that is not if you're building crap. I love this picture of this lady by a nice big pile of manure. And sometimes, getting really good at building crap is not joyful, because we know crap when we smell it, and we know crap when it's coming out of the process, and sometimes you look at this and you say, this project, yeah, we were efficient, yeah, we were effective, but at the end, we deliver, da-da, and the world kind of goes, oh yeah, good, swell, and it really hasn't changed anything, instead of making pancake mix, you can now put a little water in a bottle and shake it and make a pancake. It's still a pancake, and it's not a very good pancake, So, somebody invented I don't know if you've seen that, you pour water into this little plastic bottle, and in 30 seconds you can make a rather cardboardy pancake. Okay. I guess people like cardboard. So the question is, are we getting better at building the wrong stuff? That's what I'm going to say to you as the court jester. Are we focusing on the wrong spots, at least? So, right, symptoms that you're in the compost business, right? And there are a whole bunch of symptoms. One is, I hear this all. We need the quick fix. Right? To me, that sounds like a teenage boy on a date. This is not how you get a long-term relationship working. Many quick fixes with many different girls who quickly understand what a quick fix means, right? And leave you gone, right? And there are some organizations I see who believe that everything is quick fix. Notice the word fix. It is Band-Aid. It is correcting a superficial wound. No one's actually sitting down and saying, no one's diagnosing. is what I think I'm saying here. No one's really thinking about what's going on, what is the real problem. And I'm not saying every quick win, quick fix, every one of these early wins are bad. But when you chronically are doing that, you're not probably solving the hard ones, right? And the hard ones are probably where the glory, the beauty, and the value are, right? The quick win is acing. The quick win is easy. Another one you hear, is the let's just add in and do a bit of testing. No big deal. It's just a little enhancement, itty bitty little thing. Just slap it in there. Do a little monkey test. It's okay. And, if it rattles around and we'll fix it later, that kind of stuff. Right? And this is like, just give me a little code cancer. Not a lot of code, just, one little melanoma. Don't they just slap it onto my neck and put another one on my thigh a little bit later on. And the system degrades and degrades and degrades. And there is no joy on the project. This is no fun. This is no satisfaction. And you know why. This is no value. This is, just the worst kind of first aid. Temporary first aid. It doesn't cure. It is in the problem domain, not the solution domain. You are spiraling the product down by slapping things on, not considering what you're doing. Right? Only in software can you do everything wrong and it looks like it's right. Have you ever thought about that? You get the right outputs, and everybody says, good, you made that change. And you and I know there are hideous ways to make changes, right? There are ways that, we all know. You don't know where to make the change, so you figure out the last place before the output goes out, and you build the trap door down to the routine that changes things and sends it out. And so, they say, the system make A's into B's, and they say, no, now it's A's to B primes. And you don't know, you can't figure it out, but everybody's going, get it in. We need this fast. So you make A's to B's, the trapdoor drops, converts B's to B's primes, and there you are. And now they come and they say to somebody else, we need A's to B double primes. And so now that person looks at the code and goes, A's to B's, B's to B primes. Why the heck are they doing that? I don't know. I'll leave it. Right? Another cancer comes upon the system. Right? So you just add a little bit. We'll deal with it in the next release, one of my favorite ones. Right? Just sweep it down the road. Don't ever deal with this little critter. It just stays in front of you, and maybe somebody else will have to fight that critter, that kind of thing. I actually have. I know I'm going to lose this consult if this guy's watching. Hello out there. I got an email yesterday from somebody. I've never been to their company. Now you can get a sense of who I am here. This is a quote in his email. We want to focus on software quality in a dynamic, results-oriented environment. I'm the only guy laughing? You know what this means, right? Until quality is a result, they don't give a rat's ass about quality. Be polite, right? In a results-oriented environment, what does that mean? Shovel fast. Shovel incredibly fast. You know that, I know that. But the idea of, focus on software quality. In other words, we have never focused on software quality because we don't consider it a result, right? We don't consider it a result. We have not even basic metrics of what it means. We don't even discuss what software quality, how it would shine upon us if it was ever here, how we'd notice it. Right? And you and I know that measurement is a very weird business in that we can talk a great game, but if we don't think people will notice what we do, we know it's a fraud. You've always seen these projects. I love these projects. You start a project, and the big cheese comes down from another building or another floor, someplace you're not allowed to go. And the big cheese is in a the Armani suit or something, and you will never see the cheese again for this project. But he comes down for the morale-boosting talk, and he says things like, "There are 4 goals to this project. Right? This software must be portable. It will run on hardware platforms as yet unknown to mankind." Right? That kind of thing. This software must be incredibly flexible. It will be tailored and contoured for each and every customer to fit like a kit glove. Right? It must be intuitively obvious. We will install this system on our customers, and they'll look at it and go, of course, and begin to work productively. Right? Right? And we need this new product by April 2011. Right? Thank you very much. Godspeed. And off they go to the other building. Right? And we're all standing there looking at this going, well, we got 4 major goals there. We got portability, tailoring, ease of use, and delivery. Now, he didn't weight those goals. If we can't deliver on all 4, what gives? What breaks first? What should she do? And now I'm the court jester. I can say it out loud. I know how to weigh those 4 goals. 0, 0, 0, 100%. Right? No one ever comes back to you and says, whoa, you got an 8.6 on the portability Richter scale. Right? No one ever says that. They go, geez, this is really hard to port. Sorry. That kind of stuff. It's hard to tailor. Maybe for you. Right? That kind of stuff. But everybody, if you've got yourself, a Timex watch, it's got the date on it. And they go, hey, it's April, you done?
Sure I am. Here it is. On schedule. No problemo. All extra work is maintenance.
Right? And so, or in the compost business. I mean, it really bothers me. So, my other favorite. Oops, I'm sorry. I think I either lost you or the entire world. I think it was the world. It's okay.
Hello, world.
I feel like I've got twin 6-shooters here. Look at this. First time I've ever had this one. Okay? This is the priority 1. All I want to say is, I hope you saw Spinal Tap, and the guy's got the guitar that goes to 11. I want you to think of that the next time people say, this is top priority. It's even higher than top priority. That kind of phenomenon where, in other words, yo, heads down, full steam ahead, no thinking aloud. Work. Right? So you have, this is priority 1, and this is what the book called the Adrenaline Junkie Organization. Everything's priority 1, or no one's working on it. And everything is looking a day ahead, or 2 days ahead. I actually met a company, and I solemnly swear this is true, nothing but the truth. Every Tuesday, they reprioritize every project in their queue. All projects underway, as well as all projects in the queue. And then, depending on how many people they have working there, they figure out how many they can work, and they cut. So projects are totally bimodal. Working, off, working. Working 3 more weeks, off a week, didn't make the cut. And they kind of wonder why nothing gets done. And these people are just frantic. I mean, and I looked at their business, I thought, what is this? Is their business so volatile that this is truly a reflection of their work and their competitors? It had nothing to do with it. They were just mainstreaming, adrenaline for fun. I mean, it was hilarious. I mean, at one point they decided to do something as a Christmas special for their customers. They decided that in November. And I said to him, you should probably have decided that about last November. You kind of missed a year. Another sign you might have this disease, I love this quote, but this is, the customer is always right. Now, let me do my jester rant on this. Wrong. The customer is never right. In our business, they're never right. They don't know what they can get. They're bozos. I mean, they're nice people. But the customer is always right comes from a different world than our world. It comes from the world when the product is already built and you're haggling over it. You're at the car dealership and you're looking at this car and you know what it is and you see what the sticker price is. The guy at the car dealership knows what he's paid for it from the car manufacturer. He knows when the new models are coming in. He knows how fast he's selling these cars. He knows how to haggle. And you choose that car, you don't choose your car, you were right. But trying to haggle for something that isn't built yet is a wee bit dangerous, right? A wee bit stupid, right? There's a great book. I always like to talk about books that are not in our business. It was written probably a decade ago now, a book called House by Tracy Kidder. Tracy Kidder writes nonfiction, and he wrote a book called House. A young couple inherit a piece several acres in western Massachusetts, and they're going to build their dream house on it. And Tracy Kidder lives with the project. He wrote The Soul of a New Machine, if you're old enough to remember that book. But he's the same guy. But it's about house, and it's fascinating to read the main contractor and the carpenters and the husband and wife, and dealing with trying to squeeze money out of some of the workmen. And the prime contractor is kind of saying, you're going to get what you pay for. And it takes a while for the couple to realize, wow, we squeezed another $10 off of this guy. You got $10 less, that kind of thing. And to me, the idea that the customer is always right, I mean, not that we have to be in their face and arrogant about it, but I more worry about the customer who says, I know exactly what I want. Sit down and build me this, than I worry about any other. I mean, they are basically self-diagnosing. Right? To me, I like the mental image of, why don't you walk into your doctor and say, doctor, here, I've already filled out the prescription for the medicine I need. Just sign on the bottom line. Don't ask me why, I'm good. Your doctor would just smile at you and go, could you tell me why you think you need to take these drugs? Just give me a hint. And yet in our business, I hate to say it, there are some people who are happily signing prescriptions, saying, oh, we can give you that kind of thing. The other one I like is the waiter-waitress mode. A variation on the customer is always right? My name is Tim, and I'll be your server tonight, right? And whatever you want, we will send it into the kitchen, they'll whip it up and deliver it for you. No matter how hideous that meal is, we can make it, right? Now, let me add another one here that I've thought about for years. Let's say you hear about a restaurant here in Las Vegas that's rather new and different. Everybody talks how great it is. So you and a friend or your spouse make a reservation, go over to the restaurant. And they have your reservation, they seat you at a table, and the waiter comes by and says, would you like a cocktail first? Do you want bottled water and tap water, all the usual ritual? And it's Vegas, you order yourself a cocktail. And you're having a cocktail, and the waiter comes around and says, are you ready to order? And you say, haven't seen the menus yet. And the waiter says, no menus here. You go, okay. Where's the board with what's cooking tonight? And the waiter says, no board. So you kind of smile and go, okay, how do we know what to order? And the waiter says, we have absolutely everything. Just order whatever you like. You'd panic, right? You'd order meatloaf. You love the menu, right? I mean, I live in New York City. The first order of business in New York City when you go out to eat is, what cuisine do we all want to have? Right? And then we start to pick which restaurant within that cuisine. Then we decide how we want to, which Chinese food, do you want Sichuan, Cantonese, et cetera, et cetera. And it seems to me, the idea that the customer is always right, he orders something up and we'll go build it in the next sprint. Hey, are you sure you want to build that for him? But the customer somehow has deep understanding of available technology. Where did you get that? Right? I've heard Steve Jobs talk a couple times, and one of his great lines, I don't even remember what the question was. He said, if we listen to our customers and we went off and built what they want, by the time we came back to them, we wouldn't want it anymore. Right? That kind of thing. And I worry very much that, the technology is changing so much that why would our customers have imbued knowledge of the possibilities of what could happen? To me, that's why we're here. That's one of the reasons why we're here. And the idea that they're going to lead the dance and they're going to tell us what they want us to do is kind of the children, leading the parade here a little bit. Okay. Good enough. Another one of these. This is actually a picture of a building built in Brooklyn in New York by this very wonderful, quirky guy, basically picking up things off the street and slowly evolving this building over years. Right? And you hear these things like, well, it's not mission critical, it's not market differentiating, it's not in our core competency. I love the core competency stuff. If you really think of core competency, it comes down to breathing. Everything else is out, not core. Right? but you know, and I hear this stuff, but it's not mission critical. It's not differentiating. You know, let's not worry about this. Let's slam it out there. Now, but those systems are going to be around for a long time, right? One of the other great truths in this business is all this talk about bleeding edge technology and all this stuff. Oops, I'm doing it again. That one caught my cufflink. All this stuff about, you know, catching the edge. You know, you look, unless you're in a young company, what's the oldest software that's running in your business? If you're in a big company, in a financial business or something, I come across systems that have been running for 20, 25 years. I was actually in Germany a couple years ago, and I was having lunch with this young guy, and he turned out to be a project manager. They were maintaining a backbone system, and he was talking about it, and I said to him, "How old is this system?" And he said, "It's been running in operation for 31 years. And I did something politically incorrect. I said, "How old are you?" And he kind of smiled at me. He said, 29. And that's an out-of-body experience, you know? That's cathedral building. You know, my grandfather laid down the software architecture. Mom and Dad wrote release 1 and 2, right? That kind of thing. And you see in the famous legacy systems, right? Where, you know, on the other hand, you got to say they're there that long because they work, right? They work, and probably that part of the business is very stable. Every day somebody looks at that system and goes, "I'm not investing in rebuilding that system. Good enough. It's running. It's running." And how does everything get to be 20 years old? And the answer is one day at a time, right? And it never really got so uppity that people went, "Oh my God, let's throw huge piles of money at this and make it go away." And so people say, "Oh, you know, we only focus our things on our differentiating primary tasks." Wait a second. How long are you going to live with this system? Right? And what are you know, let's look at the lifetime cost. Right? You look at a system that lasts 20 years, the project cost is negligible. Right? The operational cost probably hugely eats up whatever the development cost. I want another image. If any of you have the joy of dealing with legacy systems, wouldn't it be great if you could go back in a time machine and go back to when they first developed this thing, you know, in 1988, you know, and I propose that if we ever get the time machine, we wrap ourselves up in tin foil so we look like future people, and you come back. It's 1988, and there you are with the project team, and you say, "I come from the future. I come from the year," and it will sound really cool in 1988. 2010. That's a really cool. Wow, 2010. You know, I've seen the future. You know, this system you're building is running in 2010. If you need a few more months, okay. None of us will remember. We have no idea how long it took you to build this. Right? We don't even know your names anymore. Right? That kind of thing. It's all true. So, let's go. Well, what do the best do? And notice I got my rock and roll thing going here. So Stevie Winwood and Eric Clapton in blind faith. They never accept solutions with blind faith. Right? And now I'm talking to the better software crowd and the agile crowd. I don't think most of us do a very good job of dealing with that critical moment where the customer has defined the symptoms and thinks he has described the disease. Well, not only has he described the symptoms, he knows what the procedure and the medication should be. And he's just asking us to deliver the prescription. Right? Here's an example. And this is actually a real example from a consultant of mine a little while ago. And I love this one. This is a piece of a requirement about something going on, and it's a container ship company. It's a really fun company, and it's out in the North American center is in New Jersey, over by the Newark airport where all the container ships come in. And this is a quote: "Cargo manifests for all ships leaving any North American port must be faxed to headquarters in Santiago by the end of the last business day of the week." Right? And one of my partners at the Guild, Steve McMenamin, wrote a book before many of you were born called Essential Systems Analysis. And he wrote it with a guy named John Palmer. And they phrased the term technological fossils. And I love the term technological fossils. A technological fossil is an old design decision, right, that has kind of fossilized over the years. And the great sin in building software is to look at the technological fossil and think it's a requirement, where all it is an implementation. So, for instance, I remember talking to the young analyst who wrote this, and, fax. There's no requirement for faxing. A fax is an implementation. It's a solution, right? The requirements don't talk about solutions, right? We want our technologists to talk about solutions, right? And so the idea of faxing, we need to get the cargo manifest to Santiago. How we get there is for the technologists, the developers to decide, right? And between you and me, in this room, we can come up with hundreds of ways to do that, right? There's, let me point out, I'm not criticizing faxing. At the time they made that decision, it was probably relatively safe, relatively reliable, relatively inexpensive, relatively secure, right? The technology was known, and okay. But no, we could put up the cargo manifest at an FTP site, and Santiago could pull them down when they needed them, right? I mean, come up with a million ways to do this. And that's called true system development. Right? Let's apply the available technology, the best availability of technology of today, 2010, to this problem. Just because they used to fax it back then doesn't mean anything. Throw that fax notion out of your head. Right? And then we get to the next one. By the end of the last business day of the week, I said to this guy something. I wish I had a camera for his face. I said, "Smells like an old batch system to me." And I don't think he knew what I meant. Right? And he kind of looked and I said, well, why the end of the week? It seems arbitrary. Why? And I propose, maybe no ship can sail so fast from North America to South America that it can beat the end of the week. So they picked a date that was safe but not immediate. Right? And this guy was looking at me, and he was looking at me like I was crazy, and I said, can't you see them back in whatever, 20 years ago, whatever? Somebody said, look, before you can go home on Friday, you got to take all these cargo manifests and fax them to Santiago. And meanwhile, in Santiago, there's somebody saying, before you go home on Friday, you got to get all the faxes from New Jersey together. Right? And so there's some poor soul standing Friday afternoon at the fax machine going, vlit, vlit, vlit. In the meantime, there in Santiago down in Chile is somebody going, vlit, 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 staple, vlit. Yeah. Okay, now they have them. I mean, and I'm talking to the analyst, and I said, okay, now Santiago has the copy of the cargo manifest for that ship that left Oakland. What do you think they're going to do with it? And the guy, clearly was just thinking, you are an idiot, to me. And I said, I know what he's going to do with it. File it. Because it's of no use. It got there before anything happened. The question, you got to keep, to understand the requirement, follow that cargo manifest. Who uses it? When? Under what conditions? Maybe it's only needed when there's a customs problem at the port of entry, and they have to produce the cargo manifest. So really, the cargo manifest has to be there, at the time immediately upon the recognition of a problem in customs. That's the requirement. And then you can keep going on and on and on. Oops, sorry, went there. The whole cargo manifest? Do they need everything on that thing? What are they looking for? What's the information they need to do whatever response happens? Right? And until you know that, you can't design or innovate. I would rather use the word. You can't innovate a new system. Most of us in this room are not in the business of invention, creating something brand new. But all of us in this room, I would argue, are in the business of innovation, taking pieces of existing technology and things like that, mixing them together in a new combination to create something new to our market, new to our organization. That's how I define innovation versus invention. And all good software has innovation, all of it. No matter what it does, whether you're in IT, whether you're building software in a product, software as a product, it all is about innovation. So how do we do it now? And our possible solutions come in, and we analyze them. And then we come up with this notion, I want to come up with this notion of an essential requirement. Then we make technological choices, and we build a solution. Right? And these areas, I just scribble them around, they have names. That's called analysis, and this is called design or synthesis. You synthesize a chosen solution. This essential requirement thing, I always tell people this, it's a really weird kind of concept, but this is a McMenamin-Palmer concept. And the easiest way to say it is a statement of a requirement without any notion of technology in it. It's technologically neutral. It says, business needs to do this. How it carries it out is up to you. But this must be done in order for this business workflow to succeed. I am now going to show you the easiest way to give you an essential requirement is by example. So here's my example. If you're staying here at Caesar's Palace, this is your room key, or this is my room key, right? I brought up with me. This is, where is it? This is my Medico lock key for our apartment in New York City that when we moved in June of 1978, I had a locksmith come and put a new deadbolt lock on. And this is the key that opens that. I've had that key since 1978. I swear it's gotten skinnier. I'm kind of worried about that. Now, this is a way cooler key. I don't know. Hello, virtual world. This is my ExxonMobil Speed Pass. It's an RFID tag. I go to an Exxon or a Mobil station, and there's like a little tiger on the gasoline pump. And I tap it, and he lights up to show that he's got it. And now, through the RFID, it gives a unique identifier. It pulls me out. It knows who I am, what credit card to charge this gas on, whether I want a receipt or not. I pump my gas. I put the nozzle back. I do want a receipt. The receipt comes out. Put it in my pocket. Drive away. And now on my MasterCard will be that charge. Right? And now none of these keys are the essential key. Right? I cannot show you the essential key because the essential key, by its definition, is a concept. As soon as I implement key, that is a chosen solution. That's where you, developers, designers, come in. Right? Now I'll try to dunder my way through key. A key is something that allows a person access that he or she would not otherwise have. So so the better software password, hey, don't tell him, is a key, right? Your thumbprint is a key. I have a friend who works at Sarnoff Labs in Princeton, New Jersey. He's been working for years on iris recognition. And he says to me, Tim, before you die, you're going to walk up to an ATM machine and you will have no ATM card. You're just going to walk up and it's going to go say, hi, Tim, what would you like? Because it'll go scan, scan on your iris, and you're in. It's only a matter of the price point, and it's coming down fast. Right? So there are all sorts of things that are keys. I, as the requirer, I want to talk with my constituents, my customers, and I don't want to say, we need passwords. I want to say to you, developers, software teams, we need a key that will only allow authorized people access to this information or whatever. You guys figure out, it's 2010, how best to implement that, what technology is available in your organization, what you could do. That's your job. That's joy. If you don't have fun doing that, you should be in farming. Right? I mean, if you're a developer and you don't love the challenge where somebody says, field of play, here's the field of play. I'm going to give you the requirement in a neutral state. You go out there and decide how to actually bring the system to the real world. That's what our jobs are when we're great and when we find that great joy. So the essential requirements are there, right? And I like the idea of analysis and synthesis, right? I'm analyzing down and then I'm building up. Synthesis is basically saying, I understand what the requirements are, and now I am making decisions that move to one specific real-world solution. I am applying my knowledge of technology. I'm bringing in technology to come up with a best outcome solution for what I have available to me. Right? Here's my son. This is Jeff. He's my oldest son, and he lives in Denver, and he's an art director at an ad agency in Denver. And I must admit, I have two sons, and they both ran away from software as far as they could go. He's an art director in Denver, and my younger son is getting his PhD in English literature at Columbia. Right? I love my sons. And this is Jeff, and he's an art director. And once he started to do this, I would talk to him every once in a while and say, what do you guys really do? Because he doesn't, he wanted to know what I did when he was a kid, and I try to explain, and my wife would roll her eyes. And so here are a couple things that are interesting. He says, when the customer tells us what they want, we use that as the starting point. Right? And I'll explain who we is in a minute. And he says, if all we deliver is what the customer wanted originally, we have failed. I said, what are you talking about? And he said, people think they know what they want, and we'll do some sketches, some prototypes of what they say they want. But then we do sketches of completely different things just to get a reaction out of them. And sometimes people go, cool. And other times people go, oh, throw that away. But they always try to do things that they weren't asked for, just to test the water of how certain people are, why they're doing that, etc. Right? And as he says, if we don't deliver something other than what they discussed with us, they could have an in-house person do that. They could have anybody. Why are they going to pay an ad agency to listen really carefully and do it, and paint by numbers? That's not what they get paid for. Now, here's the zinger for you Agile folks. They're always paired with a copywriter. Reminiscent of anything? Right? In this case, they have different skills. One's the graphics guy, one's the wordsmith. And Jeff, for a while, had the same copywriter for about 3 years. And the guy moved back. He moved out of Denver. But they became a single schedulable unit. The wordsmith, the graphics designer person, and they were a pair. Ha-ha. Right? Obviously for you Agile people, pair programmers, let me propose something that I'm not going to talk a lot about here, but again, just to stir the pot. I am convinced that the unit for analysis are pairs of analysts. A single analyst is a very lonely person. How do analysts learn if they're always working by themselves? They're never with anybody in the same tribe. From my risk management side, single point of failure. There's only this analyst that really understands the requirements for the system. Oh, the analyst decided to go to Costa Rica for holiday. There went your spec. It's in Costa Rica now. Will it ever come back? I don't know. That kind of phenomenon. But we can talk about that at coffee break or whatever. But it's very interesting. Other, professions, and I'm not talking about medicine. We're talking about advertising here. Basically understand the notion of what their value added is. And I want you to kind of look inside your heart and say, what is our value added in our IT department or what we do? What do we know and what do we see that our customers don't see? I mean, are all we do convert their dearest wishes into some programming language and or buy some packages and plug them in? Is that why we get paid? What the best do is mediate, I think. Right? They negotiate. They say, okay, that's a great idea. Let's think about other great ideas. Let's try to figure out what is the real root requirement. What are the essential requirements here that I can liberate the developers for? Right? So they nominate requirements. Right? They come back and say, is this possible? Right? They work to resolve conflict. If you've ever worked on a big project, the idea that every piece is politically neutral, hello. Right? I mean, often you've got groups, communities of stakeholders with different perspectives, and they may have very conflicting problems. One of my pet theories is large projects fail, not because we can't build large software, but we just got so much conflict coming at us, and we can only build one system. And two, we tried desperately to avoid facing the conflict, rather than running right at it and saying, we can't build it both, which way are we going to go here? I see this case for this side, this case for this side. Let's mediate this out. I mean, if you are a developer or an analyst, you have no power, right? You're not the boss. That's why you're a mediator. You're a negotiator. And they are politicians. They understand that. We are building products that change the way people work. We are, to be pompous, change agents. By the very fact that we are that, we have to be political. And I mean that in the Aristotelian version of political, right? Decision-making for the best interest of the community as a whole, not dirty politics. I'm talking about adult behavior. How's that? Right? So, what do? They get in the game early. Now I'm getting to the point where I'm going to try to make an odd case, but see if I can do this. You miss a great chance if you wait until the project is started. Right? I don't know what you call the work that is done before a project, quote unquote, starts in your organization. Sometimes they're called feasibility studies or planning or whatever, but often there is investigation into the project to determine whether this project should be born or not, right? There's kind of the economics of it. How much do we think it's going to cost? How long is it going to take us, more or less? Right? There's a risk assessment. Are we entering things that are really novel, we don't have a lot of knowledge about, so our estimates could be wildly off? Or is this mainstream? This is stuff we've done before. All those kinds of things happen. And I'm thinking the earlier we get going in terms of this notion of requirements so that we can innovate, the better. Right? The Velvet Revolution. We just celebrated an anniversary. A small protest ends up turning over a communist government. That's pretty amazing. But forget about job titles here. I don't care if you're a developer, you're a tester, you're an analyst, you're a business analyst. People who build better software have to start all thinking this way. And you might wear multiple hats. You might be a designer, but on the other hand, you want to say, do I really understand the issue or the problem I'm solving? Do I really can see it, scraped down to the bare statement? And then, now, totally free of that, say, what are my possibilities to implement this back into the real world? Right? It's mostly a mindset once the initial shock wears off. I'm not interested in divvying up little pieces of work. I'm interested in finding people who are good at certain tasks in the software development life and getting them to do that a lot. And as I always tell everybody, that's called management. That's getting people to do what they're good at often is called management. That's one of the management tools. Okay? So now let me try this. This is going to take a little while. I said in agile efforts you might lengthen some sprints or do something. Here's what I honestly believe as the court jester. I think we've gotten it all wrong. And I think one of the problems I'm seeing in agile is that the customer coming in and telling us what to do in the sprints is kind of salving over the problem. And that is, we never really look at what the issues and the problem really is at the requirement statement, right? The conceptual level, whatever way you want to talk about it. I think, okay, now I'm going to say it, I don't think it should be in the project, agile or not. Right? And let's talk about it. You got, for instance, let's just take software as a product and like IT software. Let's take software as a product. Most of the time you have people called product managers, and they manage one to a suite of related products. And the way I understand it is the product manager is supposed to be the voice of the customer, so to speak. They are tuned with their customers. They're actually talking to customers, thinking about things that would make this product more useful for their customer base, thinking about things that would make this product more interesting and probably sellable to people who are not in the customer base yet. They are, they're in the crow's nest with the binoculars for the product. They're looking out in the future. Why should the project work have that work in it? That should be asynchronous to projects, is my argument. If you're in IT, again, I've been in software all my life, so I don't know what goes on here. I go into IT types of organizations all the time where you're working with a line of business or several lines of businesses, and the analysis of the systematic workflows in those lines of businesses is done verbally. People talk to people about how things happen. I don't know about you, but when I get old, if anybody makes me executive VP of a line of business, the first thing I'm going to have on my wall in my office are some sort of diagram, graphic representation of what all my people do all day. Why they get paid? What am I responsible for? What is the work that is in my domain? How does it happen today? Analysis. Looking at what we do, right? And then looking at that and maybe grabbing a couple of technical people and saying, this seems to be a clumsy spot in our workflow. It seems to be a bottleneck. Oh, great technical people. Let's talk about this now in the feasibility study. But the revolution is, let's pull analysis work away from projects. You want to have projects go fast. If we actually knew what the requirements were when we said, we are now on the project meter, we can fly. I predict we can fly. If we can push this out, it's going to be a real hard battle. People hate change galore, especially now when you're saying, this is more your responsibility. You got to get your ducks in a row before you knock on our door and we start to run projects with a project meter and costs and all the rest of it. But I'm still, this is the first time I've ever given this talk. I'm having a hard time articulating it, but I think I'm right. I think we somehow sucked in remedial work that organizations are not doing, and we call it project work. Where if we can get that out, and maybe give them support, give them some skills, some experts who are in IT to help them get up to speed so at least they understand what's going on in their own organizations. So that they can come to us in a situation not where they're saying, this is the old system, make a new system. Right? Here's what and that we have some time to understand the true deep requirements and build a project from that point on. Right? And be able to sit there and say, again, agile, not agile, I think it doesn't matter at all. I think, for instance, agile in IT projects, and again, maybe you agile folks, suffers horribly sometimes from all sorts of remedial work because the customers haven't figured out what's going on, don't know what's going on. Nobody, and you've got not one customer, as Agile wants you to say, there is the customer. No, there's a gaggle of customers in a typical IT project, right? And they haven't thought through. They are not ready for you. You're agile, they're clumsy. Therefore, you will be clumsy. It will be very hard to do tight iteration in a lot of those larger projects. And we've got to figure out that cure. Otherwise, we are going to be very, very limited. And it's going to be, and worst outcome, we got marginally better at building crap. Right? This is where we're going. So, on larger efforts, mediation analysis may grow disproportionately, especially when the organization has to tell you all the stories. Right? Maybe I am an old curmudgeon, but again, I'm not picking on the agile guys, but user stories is kind of it's the oral tradition, right? And the oral tradition is very limited, right? Organizations are large, complex communities, often spread across territories and nations. The oral tradition doesn't work very well. Somebody can correct me, but isn't it the Hopi Indians evidently never had writing? I think it's the Hopi. And the anthropologists believe that their environment was incredibly stable, so that the oral tradition, the older chiefs could pass to the young braves all the knowledge that would allow the community to thrive. Right? And so, they're out in the Southwest or whatever in the plains, and here's how you find out where the buffalo are. Here's how you stampede the buffalo over the cliff. Here's how you pick up the buffalo burgers. All that stuff. There's plenty of buffalo. There are no white folks around to get you sick and kill you and do horrible things to you. And as long as the world is stable, the oral tradition is great. And then the world changes and the Hopi disappear. Right? And organizations that have the oral tradition think they're the Hopi. Maybe one of the reasons why organizations disappear is they think they're Hopi and the world keeps changing on them. But I'm not asking for voluminous documentation. I'm asking for a mindset shift. I'm asking for the separation between statement of issues and work and technology, to clean that up and separate them out. I want to turn that agile team of developers and testers into exactly what they are, superior technologists who have tools and abilities the others in the organization don't have, that giving them a clean, clear problem statement can just wail. And can innovate like crazy and deliver wonderful, valuable products. Okay, so one last thing before I open up for a question or two. I've been to this conference, 3 or 4 times over the year. This is a great size conference. It's 400, 500 people. In case you haven't noticed, the best part of this conference is not the talkers, not the speakers. It's each other. You've got a great chance to meet each other. And so I offer you this advice. No shy puppies at this conference. You cannot be shy. Oh, by the way, Rally, thank you so much for getting free internet access. Saved me $14.95 a day from Caesars. You got to give a hand to Rally. Free beer and free internet. Oh, right, Rally. 2 of the most important things a developer could ask for. beer and internet, and they came through in flying colors. But, yeah, please don't go out there and put your head down in your laptop and do email. We're together. The tribe has met. Here we are. Wear your badge with honor. I had to take mine off because it rubs, but I will put it back on, and just start talking to each other. Especially like in the sessions that are where you choose, because that is a self-selection. The guy next to you came to that session for a reason, and he may be from a different organization, and you two can have a coffee together and learn way more than you learned in the session. Right? So please feel free. And the other thing, let me say, on behalf of all the speakers, nothing is more balefully sad than a speaker standing there with a cup of coffee all alone. We don't know what to do. We feel so clumsy. Please talk to us. It's okay. We don't bite. And we feel like no one loves us. And so please come and talk. I mean, this is a great week to get together, and I truly hope you enjoy the entire time we're all together. Thank you very much. What? You got time. So, did I go off? No. We've got questions from here in the room, and there are mics coming around, as well as evidently questions can be asked from our virtual audience in Tierra del Fuego, wherever. Anybody got a question or a comment? Here we go.
Hey, Tim. Excellent talk. I took down 2 little notes I'd like you to explain a little bit more.
Okay.
You said the product visioning should be asynchronous to the product development, kind of like that, or and also pull analysis work away from projects. How do you balance that with the need to learn from the emerging product as we're building it?
Well, let's start out with your first one. I'm not saying the product visioning should be pulled apart. I'm saying the underlying requirements, that statement. I mean, is it asynchronous? I think it's not. The project visioning is percolating in front of the project, and when we have enough of a reasonable vision, then we can fire off that next release or that next project, is the way I would look at it. On the other hand, it may well be that the system begets the system. When we start to build it, we may want to make mid-course corrections. And from my point of view, whether it's agile or not agile, the more uncertain of your destination, the more agile you want to be. It's very simple. If you've got a lot of uncertainty about where you're going to end up, the more you want to steer. As simple as that. The more obvious it becomes to everybody exactly what you're going to build, the less value the agile development probably would be. And I would again say, for the vast majority of us, there's a great deal of uncertainty of what we're building. Right? And the agile development makes enormous sense. Another question, comment. Everybody's saying coffee. Okay, great. Oh, so, okay.
So the mindset in the executives is software is problematic because we're not predictable. And the nature of predictability and the technology, can you elaborate on that? How does the separation of what you're suggesting would help that?
Okay. I don't know about predictability. I'm saying that there are subject matter experts who are not on the project team who need to do their homework to get the team ready to work, is what I'm trying to say. In IT, there are people who are managing and conducting business and business workflows who cannot tell us the fundamental requirements of those flows. If they can't do that, they're not, to me, I'm arguing, until they do that, they cannot knock on our door. That's not our job. And one of our unpredictabilities is we are doing remedial work for others. Right? It shouldn't be in our house, is what I'm trying to say. Whether it's the product manager doesn't have his or her work done, doesn't have a clear vision of at least the next set of steps he or she wants to take with that particular product, and now we're going to fumble bum around with this, or that the IT organization has the Hopi tribe, and we're going to have to pull requirements out of the oral tradition. And often in the IT world, it's not even the Hopi tribe. They don't even talk about requirements. They talk about how they currently do it. They're talking about technological fossils, how we do it today. We have to then, scrub. It's like taking wallpaper off the wall to see the real wall. We have to take the current procedures off and look at the real requirements, then decide what we want to build. And I'm saying, depending on their ability to give us requirements clearly and reliably, or whatever way you want to say it, it only adds into our unpredictability as we have more or less remedial work. Yes?
Yeah. What would you say about a pairing of a business analyst and a programmer so that you've got the requirements gatherer and the requirements implementer?
What would I do about pairing of an analyst and a programmer and developer? I got no problem with that. I think over time it would be, again, it's the labels. I think it would be interesting to see if they don't morph into kind of a mixture of both in a way. And the thing I want about a developer is, to me, when we're starting to talk about requirements, let's assume the project hasn't even started yet. I want a stakeholder to be a technology person. I come up with a requirement. I have no idea if that's easy to implement, impossible to implement, 2 weeks or 2 years to do, whatever. If I've got no clue of how we could manifest this in the real world, I want to pull in a technologist before the project and say, here's what we're talking about in my line of business, or here, I'm a product manager. I'm talking about this kind of a new feature. What do you think? If I gave that to your group to build for me, am I giving you 2 months of work, 2 years of work? I have no idea. And the technologist may turn around and say, the way you worded it, it's going to be a bear. But if you could just back off this requirement a little bit here, we can do that. We can get that done in a couple of weeks. Could you live with this? And that negotiation starts. And again, in Tim Lister heaven, that is not in the project. Right? Because as soon as I got a requirement and I do not understand how it could be implemented, I want to grab a developer, a designer, whatever, and say, look at this with me, sit down with me. So, and pairing is okay, but the key ingredient is I want an analyst to say, I don't know. I don't know the ramifications of this, but I will go find somebody who does, and I will sit down with them, I will explain what I'm doing as best I can, and I'll get a read, and I'll go back to the line of business or whoever and say, here's where we are with this. And again, I'm trying to get that off the project back as best I can. Those conversations, I believe, should not happen so far downstream the way they always do. Okay? Yes?
We just had a question from online. How do we analyze customers' needs if we can't contact them every day?
Yeah.
And what do you suggest developers do for some of these business requirements analysis?
Right. There are so many bizarre obstacles in our way. The idea that developers can't talk to customers, it sounds totally irrational. Between you and me, I think it's the norm. How pathetic is that? I mean, it's like the doctor can actually look at the patient. They have to say on different sides of the screen, or have an intermediary. You're allowed to talk to the patient's wife, but not to actually look at the patient. Come on. I mean, to me, organizations that build these walls, right? They just remove any chance of high-velocity innovative systems. Period. You lost it. You compromised. You'll muddle along. You got to figure out the velvet resolution. You got to figure out a way to break that wall down so that the key members of the team, have direct contact with the consumers, the customers of the work they're doing. Period. Otherwise, you're a loser. Done. No dancing around it. You lost. On that high note, there's another one over here.
So you have identified certain set of behaviors and activities that need to be pushed out of the agile project management.
Any project management, I would argue.
Okay, so
software project development, period.
Is this something in your experience that is surfacing out more because of agile itself, or any other process model would also have surfaced this?
In my experience, this is something that's particular to Agile itself or any other process. I want to say to the Agile folks here, and to all people here, Agile makes so many things more transparent. It's wonderful, right? And we were talking about it the other day. And so when you do not have partnership, a true partnership with the consumer of the system you're building or whatever, it becomes so obvious. Right? If they're doing on the customer, I give you 2 sentences, come back in 3 months, and don't bother me routine, the Agile process starts to boil over and break apart, and it's clear what's happened. You've lost regular contact. Right? And let me say, let's take the other extreme. In the classic old phase development, right, it was just not as apparent, but the breakdown happened. Right? Just as another sidelight to Agile, we were talking about this the other day in my tutorial. One of the things that I see in Agile that's very interesting is if you're not very good developer, you can't hide. Right? Things become very transparent. You're not a very good developer or a tester, whatever your role is. In larger efforts, you could kind of smoke and mirrors your way through things and talk a good game. But now we got a 2-week sprint, stand and deliver. You've got this work to do, you got this work to do. Everybody knows where you are. And so it's as a 60-year-old, old dude, it's clean house time with Agile. I like it. A little fresh air in there. Maybe not everybody in the whole organization should be building systems. It's okay. I mean, it's management. Find out who's good and get them to do a lot of it. Right? Yeah.
We have another question from online. Are you suggesting or advocating business modeling or something akin to that as a precursor to starting a project?
In the IT world, yeah, that would be fine. I would like, I don't want to be so presumptuous. I would like the people who claim to be executives in that line of business to have some sort of working model understanding of what the systematic processes are in their business, and they don't say, go talk to Irving. They say, here it is. We'll walk you through it. And I don't know how they can sleep at night between you and me if they don't understand what they're responsible for and the workings that go on inside their organization. That, to me, maybe I'm the most naive 60-year-old around. I would have nightmares. I don't know what's going on in the area I'm responsible for, yet I'm being paid the big bucks and all the rest of it, and I'm a fraud.